AI is drinking up all of our
Use a lot of energy.
Our ChatGPT usage is literally cooking the planet.
ChatGPT uses this much water for a 100-word email.
There is an environmental impact.
Our use of AI
AI
is killing the planet.
Let me be perfectly clear.
Let me be perfectly clear.
I don't like seeing AI in my feed, and chances are you don't either. I'm talking about AI images, text, all of it. But I don't dislike it specifically because it's AI. I dislike it because it's low effort. Sure, there are exceptions, but that's not the norm. Usually it's about pumping out stuff faster, cheaper, and with less intention behind it. And I think that's a perfectly valid reason for not liking AI-generated slop. Beyond that, there are other understandable reasons for disliking AI too, like the impact of human jobs and the copyright issues. But then there are less valid reasons, and the big one is the environmental impact of AI. I find these AI environmentalists to be the most insufferable people ever. Like, you can't even use AI for fun without getting cancelled.
I had to re-download TikTok for this, but I wanted to do it because I wanted to talk, and I am always happy to talk.
But it's bad for the environment. Shut up! Not only is it not bad for the environment, there's actually a good case to be made that it's good for the environment.
If you use these talking points seriously, I think you're either misinformed or genuinely do not want humans to progress.
So in this video, I'm going to disprove most of the points people make about AI's environmental impact, to expose these clowns making stuff up, because they cannot find good arguments for disliking something and resort to lying. This is no Ctrl-Z, and this is why AI is good for the environment. Alright, a quick refresher. Generative AI like ChatGPT, Midjourney, and Suno AI all run on massive data centers. These data centers are basically huge collections of computers, and running these AI programs makes them get really hot, so they need cooling, which usually uses a lot of water. Now, on June 10th, 2025, OpenAI CEO Sam Altman wrote on his personal blog that the average query uses about 0.34 watt-hours. And here's the thing, people actually think this number makes sense. Why? Because it lines up pretty closely with what independent researchers found. In 2025, a research institute called Epoch AI estimated that a single query to ChatGPT 4.0 uses about 0.3 watt-hours of energy. That's basically the same as what OpenAI is saying. The energy per query is actually 10 times lower than what we estimated before. Google also jumped in as the first big tech company to put out a detailed report on how much impact each query actually has. And even though some people have issues with how they measure things, at least they laid out everything so you can actually check their work, unlike Sam Altman. But Google's main finding, the typical text query using Gemini uses about 0.24 watt-hours of electricity. But overall, 0.3 watt-hours seem to be the most accurate number we have for the average query. Just to put that into perspective, that's enough energy to run a vacuum cleaner for 1 second, run a microwave for 1 second, or run a toaster for about 0.8 seconds. Even if you're asking AI questions every single day, it's still basically nothing compared to your total electricity usage. But what about water use? Well, Altman also said that it uses about 1/15 of a teaspoon of water per query. So let's talk about water.
I think it's good for us to think about the water consumption that goes along with us using ChatGPT.
AI needs water, a lot of water.
Require a lot of water to stay cool.
AI is drinking up all of our fresh water. Like, we're not gonna have any drinkable water.
I've been screaming from the fucking rooftop to tell you to stop using AI. I'm telling y'all stop using AI, G.
Most people don't realize how much water they actually use every day. The average person's daily water footprint is about 422 gallons, or 1,600 liters. According to the same detailed study by Google, each AI prompt uses about 2 milliliters of water. This means that water an average American uses in just one day could power 800,000 ChatGPT prompts. Let's look at the water needed to make common items you probably already own. A pair of leather shoes requires as much water as 4 million AI prompts. A pair of jeans needs water equivalent to 5.4 million prompts. Even a single sheet of paper requires the same amount of water as 2,500 AI prompts. So if one day you accidentally ask ChatGPT 2,500 questions and you feel bad about it, you can just simply balance that out by not buying one extra sheet of paper.
My city is about to not have water.
In the Dalles, Oregon, 1/4 of the city's water supply is being consumed by these 3 data centers.
No water. You hear me? No water.
And if your town uses a lot of water for AI, it means less water for you.
No water. Because y'all want to ChatGPT everything.
Data centers often get criticized for harming local water access, but this concern doesn't match reality. When a steel plant, college, or an amusement park opens in a small town, we expect it to use a significant amount of local water. If these facilities provide tax revenue and jobs without causing harm, we generally see this as a positive for the community. We should think about AI data centers the same way. It uses water like any factory or college would. The local system adapts quickly and residents benefit from the tax revenue. These facilities often provide enough payments and tax revenue to actually improve the town's water infrastructure. In fact, studies show that when utilities pump more water, prices typically fall rather than rise. Take Loudoun County, Virginia, which hosts the infamous Data Center Alley.
Julie Bolthouse researches the dramatic growth of an area of Northern Virginia known as Data Center Alley.
Where I am standing now is the middle of the data center capital of the world, otherwise known as Data Center Alley.
Despite these facilities, Loudoun County has surprisingly low water costs compared to other Virginia counties. Even with a slight expected increase, the rates will still remain below the state average. When data centers move into small towns, they often provide utilities with enough revenue to upgrade aging systems, making water more accessible for everyone. There are many real examples of communities benefiting from data center water investment.
But no water.
In the Dalles, Oregon, fees from Google fund essential water system upgrades. In Council Bluffs, Iowa, Google paid for an expanded water treatment plant. Microsoft and Quincy, Washington, built a water reuse utility that recycles cooling water. In Umatilla and Hermanston, Oregon, AWS helped create systems that reuse data center cooling water for agriculture, returning up to 96% of their cooling water to local farmers at no charge. Maybe you think that every single one of these instances is some trick by big tech to buy off small communities. But the reality is that these water system improvements wouldn't have happened otherwise. The US has abundant freshwater resources and some of the cheapest water costs in the entire world. Blaming data centers for using water is like blaming customers for buying too much food in a grocery store.
ChatGPT uses this much water for a 100-word email.
Asking ChatGPT to write one email is the equivalent of pouring out an entire water bottle or
ChatGPT request, that's the equivalent of pouring out a bottle of water.
Your town uses a lot of electricity for AI, the electric bill goes up for everyone.
No. It doesn't. There is no linked long-term connection between total electricity used in an area and electricity prices. It works like grocery stores. Bigger stores don't necessarily charge higher prices. Once the supply of electricity catches up with demand, prices balance out. If higher local electricity demand really caused permanent price increases, we would expect cities to have higher electricity rates than rural areas. But in reality, urban and rural electricity rates are basically the same.
Today, data centers make up about 4% of US electricity demand.
Now you might hear some people say that data centers use 4.4% of the US electricity, and while that's technically true, the US has more data centers than anywhere else in the world. So if we're not just talking about our local electricity usage, but about our actual environment as a whole, then we need to look at global data center electricity usage, not just the US numbers. When you look at it globally, data centers are only 1% of global electricity consumption and 0.5% of CO2 emissions. And AI, that's just a fraction of that data center usage.
OpenAI answers 1 billion questions. That's enough electricity to power 10,000 American homes. 2028, AI will consume as much electricity as the 3 biggest US states.
AI could use the amount of electricity that Argentina uses in a year.
Google is casually matching the entire electrical footprint of Ireland just so they can feed you misinformation about eating rocks.
Data centers actually use a remarkably small amount of global energy, considering how much we rely on them. The average person worldwide spends 7 hours per day on the internet, and every second of that time they're using a data center. Data centers are what make the internet work. They host websites, store your photos and videos, and process every click and search you make. When you use the internet, you're essentially using a data center like you would a personal computer. The fact that billions of people spending 7 hours daily online only produces emissions comparable to one medium-sized country is actually remarkable. If anything, it's amazing that we managed to make the internet this efficient? Remember, data centers are the internet. They pack a lot of computing power and energy use into small spaces. This concentration actually helps the environment, because if you want your AI prompt to use as little energy as possible, it's better for it to be processed in a very large, very efficient data center rather than on a smaller, less efficient system. Now, admittedly, data centers do use less clean energy than most other industries. Their computers need to run 24/7 without interruption. And since each large data center handles computing for millions of people, even a brief power outage can be catastrophic. They need to maintain 99.999% uptime, which means that being online virtually every second of the year. When electricity demand rises, utilities have to activate additional power sources, and these backup sources are designed to start up quickly, but are often less efficient and more polluting. The numbers show that data centers in America use energy that's 48% more carbon intensive than the US average. That sounds scary, but when we calculate the actual emissions, each AI prompt produces about 0.27 grams of CO2. It's equivalent to running a microwave for 3 seconds, running a clothes dryer for 1 second, or driving a car just 5 feet. An average American emits about 200,000 times this amount every single day through their normal activities. Even with data centers using dirtier energy sources, the emissions per AI prompt remain negligible. In fact, using ChatGPT is more likely to lower your overall emissions because it produces far less CO2 than most other ways Americans typically spend their time. Even when we look at the total data center emissions rather than individual prompts, the logical conclusion isn't to stop using these services, but to improve our energy grid. This particularly means increasing nuclear energy production, since renewable sources like solar and wind doesn't provide the stable, constant electricity that data centers require for their 24/7 operations. AI is as harmful as the energy it uses, but is it AI's fault? If we blame AI for using electricity from fossil fuels, we should blame electric cars too, yet nobody does that.
Look at a typical AI workflow. 15 prompts, 10 images, maybe 3 videos.
That is not a typical AI workflow.
I can't live in my home with half of my home functioning and no water, and I can't drink the water.
Articles about AI and data centers harming the environment often use misleading framing. Take this example from the Economic Times. Texas AI centers guzzle 463 million gallons. Now residents are asked to cut back on showers. This sounds terrible until you read the details. Those 463 million gallons were spread over 2 years, which equals about 640,000 gallons per day. Texas uses 13 billion gallons of water daily, so all data centers combined added just 0.005% to the state's water demand. That's equivalent to about 1,600 people moving to Texas. Like, imagine if the headline said 1,600 people moved to Texas. Now residents are asked to take shorter showers. It would sound ridiculous, because it is. The New York Times published an article titled "Their water taps ran dry when Meta built next door," with the subtitle claiming tech giants are building data centers that guzzle up water and cause problems for nearby residents. Reading this, you'd assume that the data center was draining local water supplies for cooling. But here's what actually happened. Residents' wells dried up because residue from the construction added sediment to the local water system. This was a construction problem that could have happened with any other large building project. The data center wasn't even designed to use the groundwater at all. It relies on municipal water.
It's actually pretty hard to calculate how power-hungry AI actually is, since big companies like Google aren't being super honest about it.
Many articles imply that AI companies hide their true water costs by only reporting on-site water use at data centers and not the off-site water used at power plants generating their electricity. These articles will show a tiny amount of water used by a data center, which is obviously too small to matter, and then ominously add, but the true cost is much higher, without giving any numbers, leaving the readers to imagine something catastrophic. We actually have simple ways to calculate the total water usage. Data centers use about 0.48 liters of water per kilowatt hour for cooling, while power plants providing their electricity average about 4.52 liters per kilowatt hour. If you know the on-site water use, multiply by 10.4 to get the total including off-site. Now yes, multiplying by 10 sounds scary, but when you're starting from 0.00 0.0004% of your daily water footprint and going to 0.0004%, it's still basically nothing. Articles love using phrases like straining the local water system or exacerbating the drought without any context. If you use any water in a drought area, you're technically doing both of these things. These phrases tell us nothing meaningful about actual harm. When articles don't specify what the expected damages are, be extremely skeptical of this language. Simply reporting millions of gallons of water without any context is meaningless. The power for our digital clocks uses millions of gallons of water through electricity generation. These scary articles completely fall apart when you check the simple, easily accessible facts. Unfortunately, they've succeeded in creating a false common wisdom that AI uses massive amounts of water, even when the data shows it absolutely doesn't.
Your use of AI is killing the planet.
Each snapshot consumes something like 3 watt-hours of electricity, 10 times what a normal search does.
One ChatGPT request requires nearly 10 times as much energy as a Google search.
This was based on an older estimate, but even if it were true, it still wouldn't matter. A digital clock uses about 1 million times more power than an analog watch, but nobody worries about the environmental impact of digital clocks because the absolute amount is still very small. You probably heard people saying that training AI models uses way too much energy. Let's look at the numbers. Training accounts for only about 8% of the total energy, so that's just false. Some people worry that making AI chips emits too much carbon. However, 96% of a chip's total emissions come from actually using it, not from manufacturing.
We all know how generative AI is harming the art community, but in case you need another reason to oppose generative AI, did you know that it's also really bad for the environment? Let's get into it. So first we have to why would you use AI art knowing like how damaging it is?
We don't generate AI images for our videos anymore. One comment that stuck out to us said, producing images harms the environment.
In reality, commissioning artists usually has a bigger environmental impact than AI image generation. Creating an AI image uses about as much electricity as running an efficient laptop for 38 seconds. And unless an artist can create high quality illustration in less than 38 seconds, the AI option is actually better for the environment. Now, this doesn't mean that you should stop hiring real artists. There are many good reasons to commission human artists, but the point is simply that we shouldn't misrepresent environmental data to make this argument.
The next time you use AI to write an email or generate an image for a meme, think about the impact on the environment first.
How about you think of how long it takes you to write that 100-word email? To conserve water in these dry conditions, simple everyday choices such as turning off a tap or deleting old emails. What?
You multiply that times billions of requests, you can start to see the cumulative impact.
You might hear the argument that just because something is small compared to other things doesn't mean it doesn't matter. But small percentages stay small even when scaled up. We need to focus our time and energy on things that actually make a difference, not on reducing ChatGPT usage or taking shorter showers. This kind of thinking distracts us from meaningful climate action. For example, one person helping to keep a nuclear power plant operating prevents 175,000 times more emissions than someone going vegan for the same amount of time. We must focus all of our efforts on things that truly matter, otherwise we're wasting our time. Spreading our focus too thin is how we end up achieving almost nothing. If you actually want to help save the planet, advocate for nuclear energy.
Oh my God, it's so hot in October. Yeah, it's because you're using generative AI. You are actively contributing to global warming and climate change.
So, if you're telling people to use less AI, you're distracting them from things that actually matter. Even worse, you're pushing them towards activities that produce more carbon. It's that simple. AI is good for the environment. There's no other way to slice this. Therefore, I do not ever want to see this argument again from the people who watched this video. While researching, I found Andy's Maisley's Substack, which had an unfathomable amount of information on AI and the environment. I highly recommend you read more about it there. But yeah, I wanted this video to kind of summarize some of his points and also add some of my own. I highly recommend checking out his work if you find this topic interesting. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.